Andreas Krieg is an associate professor at the School of Security Studies at King's College London, and he joins us now from London. Hello to you, Andreas. Is there a sense that this attack by the Houthis could have been much worse? The missile landed very close to the airport control tower, and it could have hit the terminal building. This is Israel's busiest airport. How did this security lapse happen?
Well, I mean, this is an absolutely shocking image. I mean, this video of a falling projectile very close to the tower of the main tower of Ben Gurion Airport. Shocking images for Israelis. That was always for Israel. They always knew that would be a game changer if ever a missile was to hit Ben Gurion Airport. This is the gateway for Israel to the world and also the gateway to get in and out of Israel. So having seen these images, and obviously this could have been a lot worse with a lot more casualties, and yes, the outer perimeter was hit with limited casualties, but it still kind of really hits right at the core, at the spine of Israeli resilience. So for Israel, this is certainly a shock, particularly shocking considering that I think there was a kind of a sense of security that ending the war with Hezbollah, or at least having a ceasefire with Hezbollah and some sort of, control over what's going on in Gaza. There was a belief that at least people living within Israel would be safe. And now what we've seen is that several layers of air defense failed. We don't necessarily know yet why. I mean, there's a couple of discussions about whether the projectile that was fired from the Houthis is a very new projectile. The Israelis have denied this. They said this is the same sort of missile that has been fired on Israel and was intercepted before. Then there obviously are a lot of layers of or points of failure within the air defense system itself. I mean, a human error as well as technical error as well, both in terms of the radar system that was used, but also potentially also the intercepting projectile that was fired, misfired potentially. So a lot of things could have happened here. And we still don't know exactly why it happened, but it certainly was a failure. And it also shows how fragile this system is, because it could have been a lot worse. And if another projectile has been fired from Yemen and it does hit the runway, hits an aircraft and causes more casualties, it would be very much a catastrophe for Israel.
Absolutely. And a Houthi spokesman has claimed that the Houthis used a hypersonic ballistic missile in this attack. They travel 5 times the speed of sound, for example. They can change course. Where are they likely to have got one of these from? Of course, they have support from Iran. Could there be other countries involved in this as well?
Look, we don't know exactly what projectile it was, but then looking at the way that the projectile fell down, looking at what Israelis have said about the projectile, I don't think it was a hypersonic projectile or missile that fell on Israel, because that technology is very, very rare. There are a few countries in the world who have it: United States, Russia, China. And then and the Iranians don't have it as of yet. And so there is a very slight chance, but I doubt it, that Russia would have proliferated that technology to the Houthis. The Russians have obviously gotten involved in Yemen over the last 2 years or so. But I still don't think the Russians would have proliferated that sort of projectile or that sort of missile to the Houthis. So I don't think the claims made by the Houthis are very likely to be true.
OK, Israel has vowed to hit back, and the Houthis have shown that they are capable of inflicting damage and these injuries. How far could this escalate?
I think this is the more concerning question in all of that, is that we're now at a stage of reconciliation between the Arab world and the Iranians. The GCC, the Gulf countries, the Arab Gulf countries want to kind of make up with the Iranians. There's been over the last 2 years a lot of rapprochement happening. Then we have a US government where the President Trump, as well as his main envoy Witkoff to the region, want de-escalation with Iran. So the trajectory looks at de-escalation with Iran. Even potentially a deal is in the making with Iran. We've seen that the national security advisor of Trump has been fired recently because also, among other things, because he had a very, very hawkish point on or stance towards Iran. So everything seems to look at de-escalation. The only entity that wants to escalate further is Israel, or the only entity, especially Netanyahu government, is the one that wants to escalate further. So that is the kind of context. And so what happened today kind of gives Netanyahu somewhat of a pretext of pushing for more hawkish action against Iran, if not directly in Iran, then at least against the Iranian targets in the wider region. And so one way to retaliate is hitting Iranian targets within Yemen, hitting IRGC operatives in Yemen, hitting an embassy in Yemen. And, the next step further would be hitting targets within Iran, but I would probably suggest that this is something that they would do covertly with plausible deniability, with sort of strikes, not strikes, but actually explosions within Iran, where nobody knows what actually happens, like we've seen last week with these explosions inside Iran in the port in Bandar Abbas. So these sort of things could happen as some sort of retaliation. But it's on knife's edge. Israel is the main spoiler in this current trend of de-escalation and rapprochement, and the Netanyahu government are already pushing the narrative that this is not about the Houthis. What happened today is about Iran, and that is extremely dangerous as a narrative.
Okay, and Iran saying that they would hit back in the case of a strike from Israel. Andreas Krieg, Associate Professor of the School of Security Studies at King's College London, we appreciate your time and expertise. Thank you.